sound of a distant, slightly distorted carnival calliope playing. Everyone loved the sweet smell of cotton candy that drifted through the town every evening. It was a comforting, nostalgic aroma that reminded people of summer fairs and happy days. That is, until they realized the smell wasn't coming from the carnival grounds anymore. It was coming from the fog. The fog first appeared at dusk, rolling in from the abandoned fairgrounds on the edge of town. It wasn't a normal fog. It was thick, sticky, and had a peculiar pinkish hue, glowing faintly under the streetlights. At first, people were just curious. The air grew heavy with the cloying scent of spun sugar. Then the children, drawn by the irresistible aroma, started running toward it. Their joyous laughter echoed through the streets as they disappeared into the swirling rose-colored mist, chasing the source of the sweet perfume. They thought it was a game, a magical cloud descending just for them. But the game didn't last long. Once they were swallowed by the thick haze, their gleeful shouts twisted into something else entirely. The laughter warped, turning high and shrill, then cut off abruptly, replaced by piercing screams of terror that were quickly muffled by the dense fog. Parents who had been watching from their porches, initially amused, now felt a cold spike of dread. The sweet smell of cotton candy suddenly seemed sickening, a trap disguised as a treat. Panic erupted as mothers and fathers scrambled from their homes, calling out their children's names, their voices choked with fear. One mother, frantic, couldn't wait. She saw the pink cloud devouring the street where her son had just been playing. Without a second thought, she plunged headfirst into the dense, sugary haze. The fog was disorienting, clinging to her skin and clothes like a sticky web. The air was so thick with the scent of sugar it was hard to breathe. She called her son's name, her voice barely a whisper in the oppressive silence that had fallen. She pushed forward, her heart pounding against her ribs, but the fog was a labyrinth with no end. It felt like walking through a nightmare spun from sugar and dread. All she could hear was the frantic beating of her own heart. Then, just as suddenly as it arrived, the fog began to recede. It thinned out, pulling back toward the deserted carnival grounds, leaving the street strangely empty. The mother stood alone, panting in the middle of the road. The air was clear again, but the children were gone. Everyone who had run into the pink mist had vanished without a trace. All that remained were dozens of half-eaten cotton candy sticks discarded on the pavement and lawns, their paper cones stained a faint, sickly pink. The remnants of the candy glistened wetly under the streetlights, looking disturbingly like flesh. There were no footprints, no signs of a struggle, just the abandoned treats and an eerie, lingering sweetness in the air. The silence that followed was heavier and more terrifying than any scream. The next day, as twilight began to fall, a familiar pinkish haze started to creep in from the edge of town once more. The wind carried with it that same deceptively sweet aroma, now mingled with something else, a metallic, coppery undertone. It was the scent of sugar and fear. And everyone knew the carnival was hungry again. Scared yet? The cursed carnival has more stories to tell. Subscribe and hit that notification bell for your next dose of horror. Thank you for watching.